Kelly Street.
Gyi Sakalaki.
What's happening?
Just excited to record clienting with you. You're back again. This is great. We're trying to do one episode a month with you on clienting.
Happy to be back.
Yes.
I missed clienting. I love clienting.
Don't we all?
Well, you and I hopefully do.
Yes. I was thinking of the existentially of the act of clienting because just as a reminder, the reason we chose the name is that the core of marketing essentially is client development and how you treat clients and how you interact with them and getting clients. Like it's all of this clienting.
Right. Well, I received a lot of negative feedback about the name.
Do you really?
No, not now. When we started. Since then, people have been like, oh, love it. But people were like, no, that name stinks.
You know what?
You know what? Whatever.
Don't listen.
Don't believe the hype.
Do listen. Even if you don't like the name, listen, because we talk about good stuff.
We'll bleep it out.
We'll bleep it out. The name of the podcast, we'll just bleep it out. Is that what you mean?
We're cutting edge over here.
Yes. All right. Let's get into things because we have some good stuff to talk about today. On our last episode, when we talked about that you and I did together, when we talked about link building, we got some listener and former guest feedback.
Love it. I love having at least one listener.
Yes.
Actually, two, because we had two different people gave us some feedback.
Yes.
Well, thank you, dear listener.
Yes, thank you. So the feedback came from Rob Schenk, who was on and talking about his own podcast, the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast. And he had some questions that related to link building. So let's start with his second question, actually, because then it kind of goes into his first question. And that is journalist outreach and how to solicit stories.
Right. So first rule of journalist outreach is you have to have a story. It sounds silly, but we see this with like the press release stuff all the time where like people are like, oh yeah, I'm just going to fire out this press release about how awesome I am. And then they're like, oh, press releases don't work because no one responded. And it's like, well, yeah. There was nothing newsworthy in your story. So the first thing that I, at the risk of stating the obvious, is the creative aspect to the story that you want to tell is super important. Now, as Rob mentioned, he brought up HARO. And so tools like HARO try to flip that on its head where it's like, okay, here are a bunch of journalists that are looking for stories on a particular subject, which is great, but you still got to have some kind of story worth contributing there, in my opinion, for it to work well. Some kind of unique angle, some kind of unique expertise. And so doing more in the workup phase to like actually pitch something to the reporter, that's where the road meets the road. And the other part of it too is, just as you start getting better at it, you start building relationships with specific reporters. So that's the other thing I always tell people is like find the reporters that cover the topics relevant either to your location or to your kind of topic that you want to write about. And then, because in a lot of instances, they're regularly covering that. I was actually just talking to a lawyer the other day about the trucking industry. And so there's a publication that's about the trucking industry, trucker issues. And so the writers that contribute to that publication, like if you want to be in trucking, those are the people you should be trying to build a relationship with.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get kind of like technical brass tacks, like how to actually do this. Because the how to solicit stories, and then Gyi, you flipped it around and said, well, you have to give them the story. I can remember in talking about press releases, I can remember in my very first marketing job, one of my tasks was writing press releases. And I remember one of the first ones that my boss was kind of helping me write through. At the end, I was like, okay, but how is this newsworthy? Why are people going to care about what is written in here. And she was like, oh, well, this is just what you do. And now, what is it, 10 years later, I'm like, nope, actually, you do need that important piece of what are people going to care about. And so I think one of the big things is thinking about what information do you have as the lawyer that you can provide to the reporter, you can provide to the news organization, and what's your spin on it, what's your whatever this is, this information, and what value are they going to get out of it, and making sure that the reporter understands the value that you bring specifically from your perspective to that information or to the story is like that's the key to the outreach.
Right. And, last time I checked, journalists are still human beings.
Yes.
And so therefore they have the illusion of self, and therefore they have egos. And so if you actually, not to take us down a different
stoicism here,
different rabbit hole, but the point being that if you read what they have been writing, and then you say in your pitch, hey, I really enjoyed, hated, disagreed, agreed, thought about your article on insert name of article, where you said insert excerpt from article. Here's what I think. You'll be astounded to see the difference in the responses.
Do you think that people will, or are you seeing for when we are doing this for our clients, do people get responses even when they say they disagreed or hated or whatever that article?
Sometimes, I mean, depends. If you say I hate you and I hate your article and I hate everything you stand for, less likely to get a response from most journalists. Now, there are some journalists there that, the devil's in the details. So it's like, how do you articulate that? But if it's a strong opinion piece, especially if you can demonstrate your expertise on the subject, right? So if you just come in and you say, I don't like your point of view, it's like, okay, no response, right? But if you come in and say, I've been doing this for 25 years, and while I appreciate your take on this, I got to tell you, my experience has been much different. Here's some examples of that. Like, you're going to find that the good journalists, they want to report. They want to support that with expertise, right? So, and it doesn't always have to be. If don't just this is classic, right? People are going to listen to this and be like, "Oh, Gyi said, do outreach to journalists and tell them you disagree with all their stuff." It's like, not what I'm saying. The key here is to actually read what they're talking about, know the subject matter, have an experience, whether it's the same, different, or otherwise. But I'll tell you this, like, journalists in general, like, they're getting, especially the ones that are in these sought after publications, they're getting a lot of pitches. And so you just come out and you're like, oh, I love your stuff. If you ever need me to say something about that, just let me know. The journalist is going to be like, no, thank you. Right. Yeah. So, you don't have to take issue with it. And I hear what you're alluding to, which is like, if you tell a journalist you hate their stuff, it's like they're, they still, like we said before, they have an ego, but you just focus on the subject matter, focus on your expertise. There's not ad hominem attack time. Like, you're not coming after the journalist. You're saying, hey, I'm here to help you cover this issue with my hundreds of thousands of years of experience.
Yes. Well, and you should have templates for outreach too, like an email template that you have as your go-to, that you fill in with obviously the reporter name, the story, the information you can provide. Always make sure to really hyper personalize it so that it doesn't look like it's just a template. But when you're doing lots of outreach like this, because if you're in a large city, you could have 15 different journalists that you're reaching, or more, that you're reaching out to on one particular topic or story alone. And so you want to make sure that you make this a little bit easier on yourself. And there are all sorts of templates you can find for outreach on the internet, and I can link to some of them in the show notes.
What? There are email templates on the internet? That was just being facetious. Another point that on this, getting to like the tactical stuff, Twitter becomes the spot to be able to identify journalists. So, people always say like, what social media should I be at? I'm like, I'm usually, for lawyers, with some rare exceptions, I'm like, if you've got limited time, Twitter's a much lower priority. But when it comes to journalist outreach, like that's the place to be, in my opinion, from a social network standpoint. There are a bunch of other tools too. Like if you just search for like PR journalist outreach tools, you'll find all sorts of stuff. But Twitter, for identifying, you can do an advanced search with location filtering and topic filtering. And the other nice thing about Twitter is you can actually, because you can search by the person who sent the tweet or tweeted at, so the receiver of the tweet, you can really do some sophisticated searches on subjects when you're actually looking for what specific authors had to say. And so starting the conversation there is oftentimes more effective than hammering someone's inbox.
Yeah. And Greg Siskin talked about this a lot on his episode on here. So if you want to learn more about how to do this on Twitter properly, but in a nutshell, what he did was that as an immigration attorney, when there was a new law that came down or some sort of decree or decision, he would take that, he would break it down into 3 different steps. He would first break it down for a blog post, and that would be kind of the longer form. He would break it down even further for, Gyi, do you remember? Just little individual snippets. And then I think the third step was break it down on Twitter and just do individual little tweets. Oh, the second step was breaking it down for outreach, I believe, and saying, hey, journalist, here's how you can think about this. And then he would use the third step, as I mentioned, on Twitter, of like your 240 characters or just a small amount. And he would say, hey, here's what this section of this new law means in layman's terms. Now go. And then he would take that and tweet or message at different journalists and get some press out of that for himself.
All right. It's awesome. I think the other thing too, just to note in the context of, if the question was posed in the context of link building, huge mistake in link building in general, but also specifically when you're talking about like journalist outreach link building, is this focusing on domain authority. I can't tell people enough, especially if you're a lawyer that serves clients at the local level, don't obsess about trying to get in these high domain authority publications. Focus instead on your local newspaper, industry specific. So if there's for Rob, if there is if there are publications or sites that are legit, that are covering nursing home abuse, those would be, I forget about the domain authority, focus on those, focus on local, focus on topical relevance. Though not only is there more of a demand for expertise support, but the competition level is different, and the bang for your buck, and from an SEO perspective, in my opinion, is way stronger than trying to get a link on like Inc.com or Forbes.com, where Google is also becoming more sophisticated in understanding that some of the authors on those sites are purely doing pay to play. And so they're trying to find ways to devalue that stuff. So I'm not saying it doesn't matter at all. Like if you want to go after Forbes, like especially too, like one big thing I'm a fan of is go where your audience is going to be. So if your audience is, for whatever reason, is like reading Forbes regularly, like be there, right? But your audience is also probably in your local, if you're serving local legal services consumers, it's probably in your local publications. And if you're serving, if you're looking for like other professional referrals, go to those professional publications that are either, industry specific or other stuff other lawyers are reading or stuff other people in that industry are reading. Those links are going to be much more effective from a, quote unquote SEO perspective.
Yeah. Your local newspaper may not be as exciting as getting in the New York Times or something, but it's going to be much more relevant to your audience typically. So
right. And I think from if your goal is to rank in the local pack, and I know that if any SEOs listen to this, they're gonna be like, well, domain authority doesn't count in local pack, or page rank doesn't count in local pack. It's like, all I can tell you is this: when we see links, even from like student newspapers, like high school newspapers, or from a news release on a local school site, or from a local local fire station puts out its community newsletter, stuff ranks, people. Telling you, it's that Google is getting very, very, very local. Like, I think someone just mentioned this the other day. I think I was following the MozCon hashtag, and they were talking about the priority that Google views. Like, localization is one of the strongest personalization contexts, like where you are, like especially for those kind of searches. They want to show localized results, and they're making those. They're understanding your business from a location perspective with those local citations, local links. And it's not just, oh, this site has the most links from high domain authority sites.
Yeah.
See it time and time again.
Time and time again. Let's talk a little bit more about using HARO efficiently, because that was his second question. So HARO, help a reporter out.
What is HARO, Kelly?
I just said help a reporter out.
That's true. It is what it is. What is it beyond help a reporter out? Like, what is it?
It is basically, well, I guess I'm thinking of in terms of the website, but basically it is in the bigger scale, because it was happening before helpareporter.com came around, was basically a network or outreach strategy of, hey, reporter, you want a story, here's a story for you. Or, hey, reporter, you are working on this story, here's my intake or my input on it. Or, hey, you kind of just what we were already talking about with outreach. Hey, reporter, here's a story that I saw that you did. Here's a different take on it, that sort of thing. So it's basically just the kind of journalist outreach that we've already talked about, but there's HARO is kind of the system around it. And now there's this really great website, helpareporter.com, where you can register and you can put yourself out there as an expert on XYZ and have journalists come to you. Or they also do have source requests where the website will send you a request looking for a source on, let's stick with Rob. Hey, there was someone was caught doing something naughty to someone in a nursing home. Anybody have a legal take on this? Rob can raise his hand, send back the pitch that he has for his take on the story. And then if the reporter chooses, they will connect with him. So,
right. So the big thing that most people use it for, as Kelly mentioned, is that now the journalists come to you, right? So, and most people engage it getting some kind of email that's like basically a list of all of these topic needs or expert needs or subject matter requests for stories. And then the big thing with HARO, at least in my experience, one of the big things is that you have to filter the noise out, because it's very noisy. And so if you're just drinking from the HARO fire hose, you're going to feel overwhelmed. And so fortunately, HARO has all sorts of filtering that you can do. And so really, same thing we talked about before, the same thing you would do with outreach, filter down to location and subject matter specific topics, you're going to want to do that on HARO so that you're not being inundated. Now, you kind of got to find the right mix, because if you go just like everything else, if you filter too much and you're getting like one email a year, it's like you're probably being a little too specific.
Yeah.
So, I tend to say at least start with like a general category topic. So, if anything that includes nursing homes would make sense. Nursing home abuse, perhaps. But if you start getting way, way, way too specific, you're going to basically niche yourself out of HARO topic.
Yeah. Yeah. And for Rob, you could even do, and I'm sure these are things he thought of, but just trying to help anybody else out who's thinking of subtopics, is there is a whole big group of people now of baby boomers who are, well, I guess the ones on the younger end, so maybe it's not even baby boomers, but people in their 50s and 60s who are now like, what do I do with my parents? And that reverse parenting situation that's happening. I know a lot of people who are in 50s and 60s age category who are now like, what do I do? And kind of getting in there early on with things of how do you avoid issues? How do you properly pick a nursing home? That sort of things to look for that Rob could be a different sort of expert on, would be other good content outreach to talk about and think about for these stories.
Yeah. Some other practical tips. Your mantra should be make the journalist's life easy.
Yeah.
Don't send your pitch and be like, hey, I saw your request in HARO. If you'd like to schedule a time to talk, here's my email. Like, that's not helpful. Instead, give them a quote, give them a snippet, give them something they can actually just use. Try to include your author information, author bio, maybe a link to your author bio. That's another thing too, is people like, oh, I never get any links. It's like, well, you didn't even suggest a link source or a bio, or, you gave them a link that's like so artificial looking that nobody would ever link to it. So, author bio page on your site. If you have source material on something that you wrote, use that as a link. So like another blog post or something like that. If you host, this is another creative one. I think it's creative. If you host opinions from decisions or case summaries on your site, use those in your pitch, because now you've just saved the journalist the effort of having to go dig that up, and they're going to be more inclined to just link back to your official source material on your site, because it's legit. It just happens to be hosted on your site.
Yeah. And oh, now I just forgot the thing I was going to say. Oh, I know. I got it. Yay, brain. Good job coming through. On one of our 2 episodes ago, or one of our recent episodes with Erin Gerstenzang, just all the links you're talking about, including Gyi, makes me think of she, as part of her public speaking that she's doing more of, has her speaker website, her speaker bio page, that sort of thing. You may or may not, you may want to have a different bio or a different page for your outreach stuff, where it includes podcasts that you've been on, that sort of thing. If you don't want to include those on, for whatever reason, on your actual law firm practice bio, you might want to have a different landing page that has all of those links and those videos on it, just specifically for outreach as maybe a potential tool. I know there are some lawyers who maybe don't want to have their industry specific podcast episodes they've been on listed in their law firm bio. So that might be an option.
Yeah, I hear that. There's an issue with that. I think for me, the quotes or the actual snippet of source material with the link back to the source, that one does really well. Because presumably the journalist has some kind of sense that you're an expert on the subject, or hopefully they do, or hopefully you're building that in somehow. They're going to be more likely to say, okay, if I trust this expert, this snippet with this link to their post or to a court opinion or whatever, it makes things super simple for them versus having to like follow up with you or interview you or all those other things. And again, that's not that those getting interviews and things like that are great, but keep in mind that they're looking for the, what would, if you had to put yourself in their shoes, if you had to write an article and you're looking for source material or expertise, and you either had to do a bunch of extra research or you had an expert just give you what you needed, what would you pick?
Yeah, because think about the news cycle right now and how fast that has to happen. They do not have time to come back to you. Your quote might be better than somebody else's, but they don't have time to come back to you and ask you to expand on it or ask you for more information or whatever it is. So they might go with someone else's just because it also neatly includes those little snippets and they can tie it in a little bit easier and faster.
Yeah, another thing that I'll say too is just to make this point. Look, you know how I feel about links, love them. But if you just get quoted, that has value. So, a lot of lawyers that are super focused on links, they'll be like, oh, it's a failure if I just get quoted and I don't get the link. And my experience there tells me that Google still is getting better and better at understanding stuff about the world, including who you are, your reputation, your expertise. And so if you're quoted, that's good. Obviously, we all know we love links. They're important. They still matter. But don't give up on the strategy. This is what I encourage you not to do. I tried HARO. I got quoted a bunch of times and like all these relevant sites, but none of them gave me links. So I quit. It's like, don't do that.
Well, and do what you've mentioned, Gyi, before a lot of times is the alert, Google Alert or mention, and use those services so that you are finding things that are coming out with your name. If you're doing this outreach and trying to use HARO and you don't have those alerts set up, you are potentially missing a huge piece there because they're not always going to link to you. So you need to be proactive and see if you're getting mentioned or getting quoted on things. So then you can share the link or you can, put it on your profile and show your notoriety that you're getting.
Yeah. And, some sites, and thanks to the SEO world for this, but some sites just have we don't link out policy now. And so again, if your audience is there, if your referral sources are there, if your next clients are there, that's a good source for you. So don't freak out if they don't link back to you. And if you are trying to get the link, make linking really easy. Put the actual links in there that you want, put source code in. So, maybe even attach like a depends on the site and yada, yada, yada. But maybe you have like you just paste the code into your email so that they can literally just copy and paste it into their story.
Yeah. All right. Anything more you have to say about outreach and HARO?
Oh, probably, but nothing that I can think of off the top of my head.
All right. Well, we've still got some time left in this episode.
Yes.
So how about Rob had one more question that we were contemplating saving for another day, but we got a little time. So let's talk about conferences. Rob was wondering if we have any recommended legal marketing, general marketing, or legal business conferences that we can think of.
Oh, we can think of many.
Yes, so many.
Yeah, I think it's for me. I mean, I'll let me give some context first and some disclaimers, and then also talk about kind of choosing conferences. So, first context is that I know I'm going to say this. So first, a disclaimer or disclosure. I am on the ABA Tech Show board. I've been going to ABA Tech Show for a long time. ABA Tech Show is a technology conference, but hopefully, if you haven't been under a rock for the last 30 years, you understand that marketing technology is a big thing. And so, in fact, we have a whole track dedicated to I don't want to give away too much, but to marketing, MarTech, marketing technology. So point being that ABA Tech Show, admittedly, I'm biased, we'll have a lot of great marketing technology stuff. So you should definitely come in February in Chicago. It's freezing, but it's totally worth it. We'll
You'll
have a
be
great
inside.
time.
It's fine.
I'll be there. It'll be fun. Maybe we can go to the Milk Room.
Is it still at the same hotel?
It is.
All right.
Chicago Athletic Association. Love it. We'll sit in the
No, no,
library
no.
and drink whiskey.
Tech show. Is it still
sorry.
going to be at the Hyatt this year?
Yes, I believe it is.
All right. So then
I
you
should know
really
that.
won't need to go outside. You will be
You
totally
don't need to go outside, but we're gonna go outside. We're gonna do some bonding outside. Anywho, tech show is great. But my point, what I was trying to say before I went down that rabbit hole, is that what really matters for choosing conferences are the format and the speakers and the effort that you make to meet people and not just go there for CLE, if that's what it is. So that's my big thing is like so many of the quality of the conference. Like, what's a conference? It's a venue. It's the format. So is it more interactive? Is it workshops? We're going to have workshops, by the way, at Tech Show.
It's the last thing you're allowed to say about Tech Show. No, I'm just
sorry. Yeah, no, fair. But so is it hands-on? Are you going to get practical knowledge? And then who are the speakers, right? Who's going to be there that, are there people that, you're confident that are going to deliver? What are the topics? Like, so I'm a lot less like, oh, this conference is always good, and much more like who's speaking, are there topics that matter to me? Obviously the venue and the location and the time of year and all that kind of stuff play a role, but some other ones off the top of my head. I mean, if you're a plaintiff's lawyer, or trial lawyer, I'd be going to the AAJ. They do actually have a marketing program that they put on too. Not necessarily always at the same time as the annual conference, but let's face it, most of these professional conferences in legal, they have some aspect of marketing. Marketing is on everyone's mind. Client development's on everyone's mind. Clio, which is a conference primarily for Clio users, usually has great marketing content too. Crisp Game Changer conference, even though they have a lot of different stuff that's like, going to blow your mind, they do have marketing.
Giving away Teslas and
you're going to get Tesla.
What's the other one this year? They're giving away another car. It's fancy.
Like anyway, a Ferrari or something.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's another one.
The legal industry has no shortage of conferences. Every state bar has a conference. CLEs have conference, or if you have a separate CLE organization, they have conferences. If you are part of your state trial organization, they have conferences. And so Gyi mentioned some good ones. I've also heard really good things about NTL, National Trial Lawyers Summit. That is apparently a good one. And PILMA, one of our last episodes, Melissa Emery, she talked about getting great value out of PILMA. And that's marketing specific for personal injury lawyers. And there are a bunch of other ones out there. I technically am biased for this one just because it is my spouse's, but if you are a non-PI, I guess you can be a PI attorney, but a small firm lawyer, I have gone, but also have heard good things about LabCon, the Lawyerist conference. It's a very different one. It's not one of these big ones, but I really want to stick with one of the things you said, Gyi, that part of the big deal of going to a conference is going in knowing what you want to get out of it and participating, because the thing you hear about all of these conferences for people who find value out of them is they're digging in and they're participating, whether that's trying to meet new people, trying to expand your social circle, trying to go to the sessions and get the most out of it that you can and learn, doing things outside of the conference and going to the fun events to network and just kind of let your guard down and have fun, or really getting involved in the committees. I know you mentioned AAJ, Gyi. They have a ton of committees. I believe NTL also has committees. PILMA has committees. All of these different conferences have these different subgroups and committees that you can be on to get an extra level of conference involvement and learning and networking and on and on and on.
Yeah, I mean, my big thing is this. There's this thing called the internet where there's like all this information that people are putting out there. So if you just want to learn something on something, try the internet. It's amazing. You can do it from your bed.
Yeah.
If you want to meet people, if you want to start developing some relationships or some, maybe you want to demonstrate your expertise and develop a relationship for expertise, or a reputation for expertise. If you want to eventually start speaking, if you want to do workshops with experts in the room, like live workshop stuff, then conferences make a lot of sense because you're out there meeting people. Like that's the whole point. Otherwise, if you just are looking for like how to implement a MailChimp campaign, I've got this great suggestion for you. MailChimp actually publishes how to do that on their website. So that's my big thing with it is like, I love going to conferences. I love meeting people. I love rolling up my sleeves and like diving into people's analytics accounts. But if you're not going to do that stuff, or that's not what you're looking for, maybe a conference is right. And by the way, a lot of conferences actually record the sessions. So you can just buy the sessions if you just want to see the sessions. Some of them are even live streaming them now. So the value there to me is meeting the people. The other thing that I'm going to say, and this is going to get me in trouble. Two things are going to get me in trouble here. One is just one more. I have to give a shout out to Bedlam. If I don't do that, the other people that participate in the Bedlam conference are going to call me up. That's a marketing conference specifically for lawyers. I participate in that. But two, now everybody's going to be upset about this one. If you want hard, like cutting edge marketing stuff, it's usually not at legal marketing conferences,
Okay.
right?
No, but that's true because that's not
agree.
where. Well, you can get marketing experts in at a legal focused or even a legal marketing conference, but if you want to know what the outside of the legal world is doing for marketing, which shocker, other people besides lawyers are doing marketing, every industry in fact is, sorry, that was really sarcastic, I apologize.
No, you actually you were much, but I was actually going to say I was very impressed. You said it in a much more constructive way than I said it, which is get outside of legal, right? So if you're just look for inspiration from other businesses, other verticals, other thinking, because oftentimes if you just do the legal marketing conference, you just get the legal marketing people talking about legal marketing, which has value. Don't get me wrong, but let's get some new ideas.
Yeah, and because what you can learn a lot from what other lawyers are doing that's working for them, but then you also can fall into the trap of doing what's working for them and just kind of repeating that. And it's very helpful to find out what's working in other industries, what other companies are doing, like just non-lawyers are doing for their marketing, because if it's working for a dentist, financial advisor, or who knows, for Pepsi, it might work for you, it might not, but you won't know until you try it, and you can't try it unless you learn about it. So
that's right. I don't think you're allowed to say non-lawyer, by the way. Just kidding. Very good points. Non-legal specific conferences. Let's talk a few of those just for Rob's sake. I didn't go to MozCon this year. I love MozCon. They do make the videos available for the sessions, but again, you've got access to some of the leading minds in marketing.
Can I
drop
say
some
one?
names?
I'm going to say one that I will not recommend. So last year I went to Digital Summit in Minneapolis. They have them kind of all over, and it was not valuable.
What you were hoping for.
What it was not what I was hoping for. And there were some great names. I did have some value from Marty Weinstein spoke. We've talked about him, or Weintraub, sorry.
Yeah.
Marty Weintraub spoke. He was great. Mike King was great from iPoll Rank. They were the two speakers that I got value from, and then the rest of them, it was the thing that I talked about with Aaron Gerstenzang, actually, of here are your 5 tips. None of them are actually valuable. None of them are information that you can go back and use and put together. So there you go. And that was what session after session was. And maybe other cities wouldn't have that issue, but that was my kind of beef with that. Is I was like, oh, I just spent an hour of my time getting nothing out of this. But then Marty Weintraub came in and saved the day, and he was awesome.
And that's the thing is, like we talked about earlier, like a lot of it has to do with the speakers, right? So, research the speakers in advance, research the topics, a couple other just like marketing / SEO shout outs, Ungagged, Inbound, Brighton SEO, if you want to go to the United Kingdom, Search Love that Distilled puts on. Those are some of the top ones. Obviously, the monster is PubCon. So if you have never done a PubCon before, that might be worth it just because to see how much there actually is, but it can be overwhelming.
And you've spoken at State of Search before.
Love State of Search. So State of Search is put on by DFW SEM down in Dallas. They do a very nice job. The regional search conferences are actually, some of them are really good. State of Search, DFW SEM is a great one. The Portland's, I think it's PDX SEM is a great one. And the one in Minnesota is actually a really good, I can't remember what theirs is called, Minneapolis SEM or something, Min SEM, MN SEM. They do a great job. So if you search like any of the cities that I just named with SEM, you'll find it. But those regional search conferences, this actually brings up another good point about conferences. Size matters. If you go to a monster conference, it's less likely that you're going to have the more intimate one-on-one interactions with the experts. Some of the conferences, even the big ones, will carve out workshop time. But I'll tell you, going to a smaller conference with speakers that you really want to connect with and learn from is really, really much more effective than going to the 2,000 people conference.
Okay, here's a great question for you. So those conferences tend to, you mentioned the workshops, they tend to have an extra fee for the smaller group workshops. Do you think those are worth it?
It's hit or miss. Some of them, like, absolutely. One also, by the way, I get that these conferences have to make money and, they've got sponsorships and yada, yada, yada. But let's just give people the workshops. Let's just bake the workshops in. But so again, it comes back. I've seen them done really, really well. I mean, if you've got say you're brand new to analytics and you're getting someone who's like a super expert in analytics that's going to walk you through identifying and creating custom analytics stuff, whether it's dimensions or setting up goals, like that's extremely valuable because guess what? You can either pay I don't know how much those workshops cost in your opinion.
They're usually around 500.
Okay, $500, great. You spend $500, or guess what? You can hire an expert to do it, and they're going to charge you a lot more outside of the conference setting. So that's a way to think about it. You're getting work at a subsidized cost going to the conference.
Yeah. Learning how to do it yourself a little bit, getting the setup. That's a good point. Awesome. I think we did a good deep dive into all of those.
Yeah, it was at least a medium-sized dive.
Yeah, I suppose.
Deeper than wading.
Yes, it was not from a high dive board.
We didn't just dip our toe in.
No.
But we also didn't free dive at 100 meters.
No.
Those free divers are really amazing. You ever see free diving?
Yes. I am afraid of that.
Okay. Next
episode. I have
episode.
A lot of fears. We haven't talked about Kelly's fears yet, but I've got a whole long list.
That'll be our third podcast.
That'll be our third podcast.
Kelly's fears.
Fear Factor with Kelly Street. Anyway, yeah, awesome. So, Rob, there are a ton of good conferences out there, and choose wisely.
Awesome. And thank you so much for submitting. questions. And as always, if you've got questions, topic suggestions, willing to be a guest, or just want to tell us off, feel free to reach out to us. And if you actually, however you feel, we're always looking for feedback on iTunes in the form of, what do they call those?
Reviews or ratings. You can also just rate. You don't have to leave
Rate us. Please rate us wherever you can find a rating system of your liking.
Yes, absolutely.
Have a great day. Bye, Kelly.
Bye.